And we're live on Car Con Carne. We're in quarantine, so for the time being, it's Quarantine Con Carne. I'm James Van Osdell, and Car Con Carne is sponsored by C&H Financial Services. Business owners, visit freeprocessingnow.com to start saving money on your credit and debit card transactions immediately. So Chicago is home to an entertainment scene that I think everyone listening and watching would agree is unmatched. With COVID-19 doing its thing, our iconic, beloved, favorite places to go are in a spot none of us could have foreseen a year ago. Joining me on Zoom right now are Katie Tuten of Hideout, Chris Bauman of Patio Theater, Avondale Music Hall, Robert Gomez of SubT and Beat Kitchen, and Cole Brice of Cole's Bar. They are all members of CIVL, the Chicago Independent Venue League, and let's get right into it. Thank you, everybody, for coming together and doing this afternoon.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for having us.
I guess before we talk about what CIVL is, let's zero in on the most obvious question. Can the music industry weather the storm? And beyond that, can you address what's going on with each of your individual businesses? I guess let's just start with Chris.
So the quick answer is yes, it is going to weather the storm. Our businesses have been around for decades, and live entertainment and music has been around for hundreds of years in America. And right now it's really just a function of with CIVL and then NEVA getting the word out as to what is needed for our venues. We were first to get closed down. We're going to be last to open back up. And that puts us in a very unique situation. We also are economic drivers to our local communities. We bring tens of thousands of people a year to our own businesses, but then also surrounding businesses. And we're cultural institutions. If you go anywhere in the world, they know Chicago because of our music scene. They know America because of our musicians. You could be in the middle of Australia or Japan or anywhere and listening to American music. And we are the incubators of that. So does that set us off on the right track?
I think so.
Absolutely. Katie.
So I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine earlier, and I was saying it's kind of like a quilt, if you will. So yes, we will, hopefully we will survive. We've already seen some colleagues close their doors. So it's gonna have to be like a partnership between city, county, state, federal, community, philanthropic. So if you will, it's like a quilt, and we're gonna need each one of these patches sewed together. Our own capital, first, we've already tapped into that. So the hope is that we will survive, but I don't think we can assume that we will without infusion of support from government entities, corporate entities, philanthropic. We've been overwhelmed by our community support. People have just, I don't want to start to cry, but seriously, we have raised more than $300,000 between, probably substantially more collectively, for our staff. And I think people understand that messaging. So the hope is that we will survive, and we are fiercely independent, and we are hardworking. We're entrepreneurs. We're small independent venues. We know, I said to my husband yesterday, whoever thought that I'd ever regret the day that I can't go in and clean out the cooler. But I'm missing it, And this isn't a glamorous job, right? But we love it. We do it for many different reasons. So I hope that we will all survive.
All right, Cole.
I think definitely music will survive. Culture always survives. The question is, what will the landscape look like after this is done? For us small independent venues, we're the little guy. And, the question is, when the social distancing is over, will we be looking at a landscape where only large corporate entities are remaining, or will there still be an environment where entrepreneurs like ourselves can work from the ground up? And I think that's very important to promoting diversity and inclusiveness within the music scene, so that we can have as many different voices out there and really have a robust cultural presence.
Got it. Robert?
Oh man, I had to. I didn't receive the PPP funding. About half of the members of CIVL have, and some of us have not. And so I had to do the humbling task of filing for unemployment. I mean, this is all I do. And so along with my staff, we're all in that same position. Obviously, I'm trying again and hoping to receive it, but it's not necessarily just getting it. We're in such a unique position. Our tipped employees are making more with unemployment than I would be paying them, because my base salary to them, my base pay is below minimum wage. Their income is on tips.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be tricky even for those of us that get it. My understanding is 75% of it has to be used for payroll, and that's going to be a tough measure to meet. So I'm not quite sure. I don't think people get our business very well, and
Right.
we're really trying to get that message out there. But one thing on a personal level I want to share about CIVL, which is something we formed 2 years ago. Katie and her husband went to each of us individually and reined us in and woke us up about what was happening in Lincoln Yards, right? So it was built on a reaction, but it's become its own force. And for me, and we could talk more about that, but for me personally, it brought me to tears when Katie and Michael, owner of Shuba's in Lincoln Hall, understood well what I was struggling with, and they offered to fund me, like to give me a loan to help get through this. We compete with each other. We steal shows from each other. It's humbling. It's wonderful. It's unbelievable.
And I appreciate, you have to support the people who do what you do. I get it. You're competitors, but there's a respect there. You're kind of in this together, even though you're in this separately.
Right.
You get that.
So to Cole's point, so even if we receive the PPP, it's 8 weeks of funding.
Right.
Know that we are going to be closed for months and months and months. So to Chris's point, or Gomez's point, we're trying to explain to people how we are different. And so restaurants are close to us, theaters sort of close to us, but just people's vision of what a rock club is. Like Tim said, our whole point is to bring people together. We're about community. We want to shoulder to shoulder, so it kind of is counterintuitive. And it's our job to kind of explain to people the nuances of how we are in fact different.
So CIVL is the Chicago Independent Venue League. And just looking at the membership, we have a lot of people watching now. I want to thank Jeff and Jane and Brian and Ross and Chris and Santi for watching. These are the venues we've all been to that we love going to. Avondale Music Hall, Beat Kitchen, alphabetical order, by the way, Cafe Mustache, Cole's, Dorian's, Empty Bottle, G-Man, Hideout, Lincoln Hall, Martyrs, Metro, Park West, Patio Theater, the Promontory, Reggie's, Riviera, Shuba's, the Silver Room, Sleeping Village, Smart Bar, SubT, Thalia Hall, Tonic Room, the Vic, and the Whistler. That's a lineup. That's who we're talking about. That's just 20 members of this CIVL organization. So, Katie and Robert, is this essentially a political organization?
I don't know. Depends on how you define that. We're not an organization that's going to get behind a candidate, not in that type of political. But we understand very well that every decision that impacts us is a political decision. Right now, our immediate need is funding and survival. But we were just talking with the city of Chicago about how to change the relationship of the venues with the city, meeting with the politicians of the city. How do we work together instead of this historic? I've been doing this. I just celebrated 25 years with SubT, and I've never been able to work with the city on anything. It's always against us. We're here despite the damn city, not because of, and that is absolutely true. And that just started to change, and then our world imploded. But we were just talking to them about booking shows in Millennium Park and co-book. Why not have shows play there and in our clubs? Bring them to the neighborhoods too, not just downtown. Why are our tax dollars creating shows that are directly competing with us and taking bands that we cannot bid on anymore? It's one thing that we're competing against them that night, but they now took away a band that we can no longer book, and that just started to change.
And to make this,
CIVL is independent. So we have very different political backgrounds and initiatives. So, and then what Gomez said, like our civil meetings were kind of, they were getting boring, and not to us, but we have a lot of minutia that we deal with in our clubs, like who's your best payroll guy, who's your accountant, so we were collectively sharing resources. That was really the beauty of civil. And now it's become something quite different in that we're all a support system for each other. Like, how did you get your money out of GoFundMe? Did you apply for this? We share, like, hey, Facebook has an RFP out now. So.
Well, one of the things we were talking about before we started going live, one of my goals when I started doing this podcast every night was I want to support everyone. I want to, do what I can for all these venues. And I thought I'm going to start talking about all these, GoFundMes that have turned up for all the different venues and employees. And it quickly got overwhelming really fast, like to the point where it left me breathless. Like I can't help everybody. I mean, personally, professionally, like I don't know what to do. So I'm glad I wasn't as plugged into civil. I'm glad this exists, knowing that there is this kind of infrastructure for the independent venues in Chicago. This is a great thing, I think, for all of you.
Yeah, I want to have a shout out to Shure's microphone. They gave us financial support recently. Is that what you're using? Oh, so, they supported us, and it's exactly what we needed when we needed it. And it was very heartwarming because they said they wanted to donate to someone local. Also, it was easy to give to civil because it's collectively all.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And, for the people who are watching, let's see, Natalie and Edmund and Mike just joined. I mean, here are some numbers. 16 representative venues of the civil membership. Because of COVID-19, 1,219 canceled events. Number of audience lost, just under 300,000. Lost revenue, over 7 million. Full-time jobs affected, here we go, 206. Full-time wages affected, 1.3 million. Part-time jobs affected, 1,702. I mean, these are staggering numbers, and these are people in our community. And it just seeing the numbers laid out like that, I mean, thank God you guys are banding together like the Justice League, really.
That's only 6 weeks. Those are our numbers just until the end of April.
Yeah.
So how do you move forward? What's the next step? How do you work to ensure that members of civil can come out of this okay?
Well, I can speak to that a little bit. So, Katie, I think you started on this with the whole quilt concept. It's going to take a lot of different pieces. Kind of, James, how you're saying you're feeling overwhelmed. Well, so is the governments, right? Our local government, our state governments, our federal governments are also overwhelmed. And that's why, as Gomez was talking about this PPP thing, they're talking a big game, but when it comes to at least our industry, it's not coming through, and it's not reaching the people who really need it. And our unique industry is also going to have its own challenges and its own timeframes. When we do get the green light to open back up, we don't know if that's going to be at 50% occupancy, if it's going to take time for people to get comfortable to come back out, which is a whole nother concept to talk about, is safety. It's like I've been talking about the last couple of days that, back in the day, we screened people for some shows for weapons. We screened people for metal detectors, things like that. Well, the new screening is going to be disease. Do you have a disease? And it's you can catch that, and you don't even know you might be giving it to someone. So we're going to have unique challenges that we're going to need the right funding from local, state, local, city, and federal government. And that really, civil really inspired this group now, NEVA, nationally, because we need to go to the federal government to get the money that is going to get us through this. It's going to be a conglomerate of federal and state and local.
So a lot of us who are listening on the podcast or watching online right now, Jeremy and Katie just joined. What can we do as supporters of your venues? I appreciate what you're doing at your level, but what can people who like to go to your places, have a drink, see a band, see live comedy, how can we help you?
I would say one thing that would be great is please contact your federal elected officials. Let them know that we're facing a unique challenge You know, 8 weeks of funding is just not going to cut it for venues that are closed for maybe 8 months and then facing opening up at possibly diminished capacity. So we need some special consideration, and we need our fans, our supporters, to contact their elected officials so that they can know that there's a movement behind us, and you know, that we're out here.
Ways to help, obviously, with the funding and helping us support our staffs through the GoFundMe's. But like you said, we're all in this position. How do you give to everyone? Well, you can't. I mean, whether it be picking your favorite venue or anything like that. When it comes to shows that are already booked, is not getting scared and running for the refund. You know, I mean, the shows are, if they're going to be rescheduled, be patient with us. Some are getting pushed into the fall. Some are playing it super safe and going out into spring is what's really happening right now. Everything that was pushed to the fall, they want to reconsider and push it to the spring as a more of an assurance that the show can happen. So I guess the request to people is just be patient, let the money sit there with it, and just, you know, be excited when the show does come back around.
I want to leave on a positive note and kind of reinforce what all of you do. I want to go around, all four of you, share a favorite memory or just moment of being a club owner here in Chicago. Let's start right at the top with Chris.
You know, I will say something about Patio Theater, which was built in 1920. And, you know, back in the 20s, people would go to theaters every single week because they wanted to get their news. They didn't have TVs at their houses. That was where you found out about World War II. That's where you found out about things going on. That's where you found local talent. That's where you were able to experience things. Something was beautiful for me when I got Patio going again in 2018 and seeing a full room of people and seeing that and experiencing that, and the ambiance. They're never going to build our rooms again. You can have a lot of new rooms pop up, like Live Nation can build 20 houses of blueses, but those are not going to have the same history that we've been able to create at the Hideout or SubT or any of our venues. I mean, there's history there. So there's something beautiful about that, and you can't replicate that. It's authentic, and that's what we have. We're at risk of losing. And so, any support from you, James, it's just so cool that you brought us on here and, getting the word out. And, we're going to hopefully keep touching base with you, because there's going to be other things we're going to need to do over the next couple months to make sure that we're going to be around at the end of this.
Well, we all want you around. Katie?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm going to say when Kelly Hogan and Nico Case dressed up as Hart for Halloween. We've had weddings, funerals. There's so many joyous things that we've had. So hard to say what's the favorite. But.
All right, Cole?
I don't think I could pick one favorite, but I will say that, like, maybe once every 3 months or so, I just find myself standing in the middle of, like, the packed club with a really special musician, and everyone's there just vibing on it, and just to have a moment just to think about it, like, how special it is just to be a part of that story. And usually I don't think about it because I'm busy, like cleaning up vomit in the bathroom or opening.
Yeah, I hear
you. But sometimes you just, like, get a moment just to, like, sit with it, and it's like the most special feeling. It's fantastic.
I agree.
That's awesome.
In the sound booth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Robert?
I can't tell you how many times I've finally made it past my staff and made it into the room to check out a band I've been wanting to see or see again, and I get there and it's like, good night, thank you. countless fucking times, but we're going with positive. So I'm gonna say when after Jeff Tweedy played at the Hideout for 253 times, he finally played.
Oh, come on.
Okay, fine. Lizzo. And you're bringing up a really good point. Like we're scared. We're in battle mode, right? We're in a very frightful mode, and we can't stay there. It's not our nature. And so, my staff and I are thinking about funny and clever posts, like who was there when Lizzo performed, And my kids are like, Lizzo was there, and of course she wasn't Lizzo, but she's like, she's not going to play there now. So fun stuff like that. So just kind of gravitating to what is more positive, and as you're doing on the show, and keeping it positive.
Well, and at the end of the day, I mean, the word came up earlier, community. You have your own communities. You're part of this larger fabric, or quilt. You're part of this overall community, but each of you with your individual bars and venues have your own community built around it. And I think, Robert, kind of what you're saying, like with funny posts or whatever, you're being part of that community. You're
right.
Letting them know they're still welcome in whatever you're doing. So I want to thank all four of you for joining me. We pulled this together at the last minute. I saw what was going on with CIVL. I wanted to talk about it. I want people to know what's going on because we all want to go back. Obviously, we can't wait for a way to find ourselves back in your venue. So just talking about this, I think, is really important. So thank you all for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, James.
Save our stages.
Yeah, save our stages.
Right.
I'm going to stop the Facebook live stream. Thank you all for watching on Facebook. Much appreciated.